It's sexy getting ready time.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're on 10, baby. We're all the way up.
Feeling good, baby.
We know why you're here. It's a sex appeal. Nothing sells like sex. Sexy, sexy sex.
Man, let's just talk about it, because when we talked about this road trip, we talked about the next 6 games, as we called it, 7 games. We wanted to go 3-5 or 3-5, 3-4, 3-3. That was our goal with this next 7 games. We're sitting at this position where we have 2 wins against the Timberwolves and the Hawks, and then 3 losses in a row. Like, these are the losses that I circled, and I was like, you know what, if we have these losses, it's okay, because now we get the Heat, and then we get the Timberwolves again. So I feel like we're on the right track right now, and our skill set really is going to frustrate the Heat out there. And we saw what we saw what Shea did the other day with 42 points, pretty spectacular. But we're not going to get stuck talking about this game very much. But I did want to bring up the things that we saw with the fact that there was 80 points scored between between Shea and Luka. So hell of a game. If you guys haven't seen it, it's just, it's worth it, man. It's worth going back and seeing. There's a lot of great plays, a lot of great moments that we're going to look back at and be like, okay, that was great to see. But there's also some other glaring factors that we have out there, and it's interesting to see the Mavericks take advantage of that, one of those issues that we're having.
Yeah, but we're looking at the Mavericks, and we're like, yeah, we want to win the game. But in the end, the Mavericks, where they're at with Luka at this stage, they have to win.
Yeah.
They're in a win now spot. And we're sitting here, and as much as we want to win every game, we're just not. We're focused more on development. And that means sometimes we're going to encourage players to do things that aren't what they're the best at. Now, when you're in a win now mode, you're encouraging players only to do what they're best at, right? So that difference really relieves all the pressure. And I like the balance we saw. I like the runs we saw. I think there was a little bit of mentality, kind of like when you and I were playing one-on-one growing up, where you would just kind of like get up by a lot, stop playing as hard, let me catch up, and then finish the game with a you weren't really going to win that one, right? But we made them play harder. So you got to give us credit for that. You love the effort defensively and taking charges. Dort was all over that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's great, man.
And Poku is playing, and we always say this, you'll play because if you can make a defensive impact. So while we look at it, it was like, well, he didn't have an offensive game that's worth anything. His defensive impact was consistent. His rebounding impact was consistent. That's a better indicator of whether or not he's prepared for more minutes than whether or not he can hit shots, because that'll come and go. We've seen that with other players, and they can earn minutes, and we're watching it happen with everybody. So, yeah, there was a little PTSD for the Mavericks when Isaiah Joe started knocking down shots. They were like, uh-oh, we've seen this before, right? But they got it done. Kudos to them. Luka, excellent player. Some of his shots, bro, it's it feels like a prayer, but then you're like, it's Luka. It's not a prayer.
Yeah.
He always seems to be on
incredible,
balance.
Man.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. But then we have Shea, and you're like, you got to love his trajectory at this stage.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing like it. So I feel like we're looking at 2 of the best players in the Western Conference for the next 15 years if they stay healthy, and players with their skill sets usually end up playing for longer than 10, 15 years. They could be 20-year players and, set all kinds of records, triple doubles, scoring, and otherwise, because of their immense talent. So we're fortunate to see this level of basketball at this stage.
Yeah, and I want to clarify some things. We said some things last podcast that really sent a ripple effect. I've got, I want to say 4 emails. I've gotten a few text messages. I've gotten
this is not for children's ears, okay?
Yeah, I've gotten contacted through Twitter. Yeah, let's go over that before I get into about Baisley, because I want to talk about Baisley because it's something that it's on my mind. I needed to get it off my mind. But here we go.
Rated R. We are rated R.
check this review out. All right, and I love it because to me this is exactly what we're going against. We're not going for that nerd. We're not going for that person that's all about the stats and it's all about how do you properly pronounce things and how you properly praise Jesus and all that stuff. All right, we're going for the guys that are like us, and all you guys have been listening to us for a while and know exactly what type of personality that is, and that's that.
We're the fun guys at the strip club.
Okay? Yeah. We're the ones throwing lobs of money up in the air. And let's go ahead and talk about this review right here, and then I'll pass it over to you to say what you got to say, Mark. It says, for men who claimed their lives are full of laughter and fun, claimed, this is the most hateful sport podcast I've ever heard. Telling off local media with F-bombs, comparing one to Hitler, and claiming one had a micropenis, all while not even pronouncing their names correctly.
It's small.
Was bummed to hear the hatred. Now, I want to put this before I pass it back to you, is the hatred only comes because of the way these guys have consistently talked negative about these players. That's where the hatred comes from, all right? That has nothing else to do with anything else. The second thing about this is that I don't remember comparing anybody to Hitler, but we did say that something was a micro penis. Was that you, the Hitler thing?
Well, I have a tendency ever since people like started comparing us to,
but pronouncing the names wrong. What do you think about that? Pronouncing the names wrong. That's what Mark and I do, guys. That's what we do, right?
I think that was the Dingleberry Trammell thing.
Right. Listen, guys, we're not going to pronounce those guys' names properly ever on purpose. We might accidentally say them properly on purpose, but those dudes we're never going to say properly because you got to earn our fucking respect. And that's that. And Barry fucking Trammell has not done that at all. So I'm throwing this back to you, man. And I'm saying this is that I will continue saying the fuck bombs every fucking day without fucking thinking about it because it's only a fucking word and it's only fuckity fuck, 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 fuck. Right, guys? So fuck off if you don't like our fuck words.
I'm just going to say straight up, once and for all, the drugs made me do it. I can't be held responsible for anything I did while I was under the influence. So if that did come out of my mouth, which it seems like it probably did if it was one of the two of us, and I'm assuming this listener got it correct because, like, let's face it, everything else indicates they listened to the episode. Micropenis, oh, that was definitely us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
mispronouncing names. Okay, so yeah, I did it. I'm sorry I got high.
Yeah, I listen, guys, like, we're not here, and we've done it in the last few podcasts, and we keep doing it. We're not here to compare ourselves to other podcasts because there's no comparison. Like, we let shit fly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are the dudes that are sitting in the corner of the bar, drinking our asses off, screaming at the TV. All right? Not giving a fuck that there's other things going on at the bar. Like, that's who Mark and I are. And it's the passion that we're here for. And it's the desire to put something out there for you guys. And I looked at our rankings the other day, and it was insane, man. Like we're ranked in the U.S., we're ranked in New Zealand, we're ranked in Australia, we're ranked in Korea. We're ranked in so many countries right now. And I just take a deep breath and I keep on saying, like, we're not here for the nerds. We're not here for the stat pushers or the stat munchers or whatever you want to call those guys. Like, we're not here for those people. We're here to just talk about the game and what we see. And we don't focus on the fucking losses, because if you want to sit here and look at all the losses and say, oh, look at all the negative things we can find, it's obvious all the negative things that we can find. I mean, it's there, but we don't focus on that stuff. We want to talk about the good we see in each of these players.
Yeah, man. And I don't feel like I have anything to prove as far as how much like laughter or fun we have in our lives. Like, that's not really.
We don't have laughs like we do.
Yeah.
If we don't laugh.
Like, I get it. Like, he's obviously a fan of some of these, these media personalities, and it's fine. But like, if they just did their job at a higher level, then we wouldn't even be doing a podcast. But it's okay. They can mock our players, but if we say anything that's critical of them, we're immediately bad. But we're used to that, honestly.
Yeah.
We understood that when we got in, because there's something about these media personalities that people feel like they're unapproachable. You cannot criticize them, even though their entire lives are built up being critics, right? If you criticize the media, like that's a bridge too far. And we've always just said, like,
but it's okay for the media to criticize the players, which that's why we call bullshit. That's why we're holding them accountable. But with that being said,
that's it. That's the whole thing.
That's it. I want to throw out here real quickly. We had one of our new listeners, reach out and talk about Bazley and the way that he disagrees with the way we talk about Bazley. And I want to reiterate kind of what's going on here with my personal idea of what's happening with Bazley is that he's 22, guys, right? Right now, he's allowing Usman Jang and Jay Will to tone in their skill levels in the G League right now. That's what Bazley's there for, right? Eventually, Bazley's going to have to go up against these other guys in playing time, and he's going to lose playing time, or he's not going to feel comfortable, or his team-friendly contract is going to be tradable, or whatever the case is, right?
Or
it's going to happen. Or he figures it out, and guess what? He's the top of the line
another
role
option.
Player.
Dude, we could be sitting here with Poku being down with injury. We don't know how long his leg injury is going to keep him out. I don't know if you've heard anything, but last I saw it, like, we can all just admit it didn't look good, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to speculate any further than that, but with, like, a young team, injuries happen at a higher rate, okay? So you need a next man up mentality. And like you said, so on top of being able to let those players develop in the G League, right, now he could be asked to do even more. And like you said, then that's where
role.
Figure it out suddenly becomes a possibility. And
let's just
everything's
talk about
in play.
It. His defense, when he's out there playing 25-plus minutes a game, 30 minutes a game if he gets it, he's in the top of the league in block shots. He's up there in steals. He's up there in rebounds. Like, he's a great defender. And
Didn't you like him on Luka?
Player.
Like,
what?
out there defending on Luka?
Yeah, like, and that's what I'm saying is that I get he's not everybody's cup of tea. I get it, okay, and I get that even I'm bringing him back up right now is going to frustrate people because he's not everybody's cup of tea. But
he's on our team. We have to pick up the people who are being beaten when they're down.
He's 22, right? He's a veteran on this team at 22.
Mm-hmm.
He has a $4 million contract, which is at this point a team-friendly contract. Even if he gets another contract, it's not going to be much more than this $4 million that he's getting right now, because it'll be a team-friendly contract.
Right.
And to me, having a player like Bazley that's on your bench, that steps up when players get injured, when players aren't playing well, and all that other stuff, and steps up and gets 15 minutes, you always need Mike Muscala out there. You always need a player like that that's on your bench, that's willing to do what it takes when it goes in the game, playing that 15 minutes a game, because everybody recognizes if Mike Muscala is going to go out there and play 30 minutes a game, he's only going to play 20 games, 25 games in the season.
And what's more
because of the
important,
way he plays, how hard he plays.
Like, whenever you're getting toward the end of the season, or having him in January, like, you want Mike at the end of the season playing his best and being as healthy as he can be. Like, I think that this whole idea that we have too many players on our roster and we have to make some choices coming up is really, like, not exactly accurate at this stage. I understand that those choices do need to happen, but they don't necessarily have to happen from the fans choosing, okay, well, Bazley's not working out, right? Really, what it's probably going to happen on the edges. It's going to be some of these two-way players who either move up or move out or get traded, or and there's also going to be other opportunities through, like I said, injuries and things like that. We don't know how it's going to all play out, but opportunities will be there. Like,
you're right.
What we know for sure, the sign that that the times are coming to an end is when the opportunities are no longer there. And I know everybody was like, oh, well, Bazley went 2 games without playing. But when Coach was asked about it, he didn't say, oh, well, we didn't have room for him. He was basically kind of like, we're trying to figure out how to get the most out of Bazley and get, like, kind of the optimal, like, Bazley game plan, if you will, right? So in the end, that's what 2 days off or 2 games off represent. It's not that he's out of the lineup. We have to keep that in mind. It's development. And sometimes it comes in different forms.
He's 22, right, guys? Think about it. JRE and him are the same exact age, all right? And if you look at them and you're like, oh, well, the player development is done with Bazley. It's over. Now he has to produce. I want you guys to realize that Bazley first was drafted around Russ era, right? Then he had Chris Paul, okay? Then he had 2 rebuild seasons. I mean, like, it's been hard for him, man. I get it. Coach Donovan and all that other stuff that comes with it. Like, listen, it's a different game than it was 4 years ago when he was drafted. You know, it's a completely different game. And watching these guys and saying guys like, you know, I was here when everybody said Jeremy Grant will never be a 15-10 player, never be a 15-10 player. Like, we're wasting our time with him, and we can get, you know, a late first round draft pick for him. We should trade him. And I kept on being like, Jeremy Grant is going to be a phenomenal player, but we don't have the time to sit there and develop him. You know, we need to we need to have that rebuild motion. And it was great that we sent him off, but it's hard to watch Jeremy Grant dominating the NBA like he is, because he was one of those players that I look at and I'm saying he got away. And I'm looking at Darius Bazley, and yes, people are like, he needs to learn how to shoot a three at a consistent rate, right? But if we're expecting him to shoot threes at a consistent rate, like, we just don't understand Bazley's game. Like, he shoots 1 or 2 threes a game. That's it. The rest of it is driving to the hoop and dishing. And if he has an open lane, he takes it. All right. And then on the other side of the defense is he's one of our best defenders on the floor. And when he's on the floor and we have people like Poku next to him, and we have J-Dub and Shea and Dort all there, or Josh Giddey all there, like, it's a nasty defense out there. And that's why I keep on looking at this and I'm saying, like for Bazley, I don't want to give up on him. If Sam Presti decides to trade him, then I say, well done, Bazley. We appreciate what you've done. I am cheering for you in the NBA, because I love who Bazley is as a person. And that's how I feel about most of these guys that come here to Oklahoma City. And Bazley's given us 4 years. 2 of them was the shits. Mm-hmm. And he was out there still giving his heart out, doing anything it took for us to get a W. And that's what I love about Bazley. I remember those times. And to me, there's nothing that's worth it to trade a young man like this at 22 years old, when you still don't know what his body's going to turn out to be. You still don't know what his, tenacity is going to develop. And I look at him and I say, you know, if he was 24 or 25, I would say, okay, it's time for him to be traded. But that's 2 or 3 years away. Don't give up, guys. Look at Bazley as one of those pieces that are building blocks. And I get it. Shame on you for calling Bazley a building block. But his mentality, his heart, his desire, his tenacity, everything that he brings to the game, and he shows these guys on a day in and day out basis, goes right up there with Kenny Hustle, Kendrick Williams. You know, goes up right there with Dort. And that's what you need this team to be full of. You need guys like that. And if you're thinking Bazley's going to be one of those guys that's averaging 15 and 20 or 15 and 10 or 10 and 15 or whatever, it doesn't matter. If you think Bazley's going to be out there dominating games like that, then you just don't understand exactly what Bazley's idea of a good game is. And that's lockdown defense. That's hard nose, getting rebounds, getting the ball up, keeping the ball in the rotation, and keeping the ball moving. That's it. If he gets an open shot, he takes it. It's not complex, guys. And Bazley is a great player. And I get it. Not everybody's cup of tea, but he's my cup of tea. And I'm going to keep on praising Bazley.
And look, this is basically, it comes down to one thing. Like, if we're going to defend whoever's being picked on. And I listen to all the other podcasts that have produced a podcast since our last podcast, right? All the Thunder ones. They all think that it's their job to declare winners and losers, and Bazley's a loser, and Bazley's out. Like, everybody on, I don't want to say
the same guys that said Poku was a loser, give up on Poku, that told us that Dort would never be good at all. We need to trade him while he has value.
Podcasts, and there's probably like 10 people that frequent these podcasts, and they all say they're done with Bazley. So, like, this just reminds me of like growing up on the playground, right? Like, if I saw somebody who was getting picked on, like, that's who I was going to go play with and defend. Like, that's just it. Like, I don't think that it's cool that people are picking on him. He's on our team. He's a Thunder player. If I was hearing somebody who was supporting a different team mock him, then I would stand up for him. Yeah. And if somebody on our team or our media, our supporters are going to tear him down, we're going to stand up for him. Bazley's not the first player that we've done that for. He's not going to be the last. It's a very simple formula.
Yeah.
When we see somebody getting picked on, we say something.
It's simple. We protect these guys, and I get it. again, everybody's like, well, we're not, that's just not reporting. That's not whatever. It's, to us, it's about supporting this team. This is a fan. This is a family of people that we talk to all around the world. I mean, we have guys that I talk to on a regular basis from France. I have guys that we talk to from Spain. We have guys that we talk to on a regular basis from Australia. We have people we had talked to from South Korea. Like, we have people from all over the world that we communicate with and we talk to on a regular basis. And it's because, like, we believe in this team and we want this team to have a place, a podcast where it's not about, look at our accolades and look at what we can do and look at how smart we are and all this other stuff. Like, this podcast is about creating a family and a place that we can talk about players in a positive note and not worry about anything else like that. And
that's why we hear from the players' families with support.
Yeah,
like,
we do.
I get
and
that some
insane.
people are all offended about how we're talking about the media, but guess what? People all around the world, including the players' families, hear what the media is saying, and they think that doesn't seem right. And that's what we keep hearing from other people. So yeah, I get it. Like,
and
if
now that
you're
Isaiah,
on the tit of these other ones, then you think that you're getting nothing but good stuff. But I'm telling you, like, they're giving you some seriously fucked up shit.
And Isaiah Roby's family, they were amazing. Whether in town, whether here in Oklahoma, we talked to his dad, we talked to his brother. Like, we kept those communications open. Like, we knew what was happening with Isaiah and everything else like that is because the family, just amazing people. And this is not the only family that we talk to. And it's like people will come to us and they'll share information with us, and it's inside the family. And we don't go out and we don't share it, but we still have this communication with the families and ultimately the players because of it. And, like, we understand that sometimes we're going to be off and we're going to be wrong. And we're not here trying to prove a point of how many times we can be right. But when we look at Poku and the basics in the beginning, and I started talking about Poku and developing into that central role, people literally on other podcasts made fun of us. Like, thought we were fucking crazy because we were saying Poku is going to morph into that central role. And everybody thought we were crazy. But guess what? He has morphed into that central role.
Here's one thing,
he's playing
bro.
that more and more, and it's really impressive how he's taken that on his thing. And in top 10 in the NBA in blocks. And what can you say? Like, he's done everything you want.
I want to say, bro, is like, this isn't the first time where you've been able to, like, look at something like this and, like, give a reasonable prediction about the future. Like, I saw you do it as a coach with some of the players that you were coaching, and that you actually had the ability to, like, watch them play and practice and then respond and improve and then go on to have college careers. Like, and you were consistent about, being able to predict who had the ability. But now that you've started watching the Thunder and doing that same thing, it's at a different level because these players are playing under, with a lot of, spotlight, a lot of camera. But, like, it's not like you're new to this, right? You're not new to the game of basketball. You're not new to development of young athletes.
No,
and
not at all.
So in the end, when you make these predictions and people mock them, they're just, like, verifying their ignorance because, like, yeah, it isn't logical. Like, what you're saying isn't obvious, but that's what makes it outstanding. And that's why it's worth listening to, because if you don't understand what Dave is saying sometimes, then, like, you should take the time to try to figure it out instead of, like, say, oh, that's ridiculous, because he's right about more than just Poku too.
Well, I appreciate that. It made me feel good. But the reality is that I just try to see what Sam Presti and Coach D and the coaching staff put these players in the roles. And then, like, the fact that we look at things positively, right? We look at the way that Jalen Williams, J-Will, is moving in that forward role. And you're looking at Jeremiah Robbins Earl in that forward role, Darius Baisley in that forward role. You're seeing Ousmane Dieng in the G League being in that hybrid forward/guard role, which is, I love that role for him. I don't want to see him switch over to that power forward, that forward role. I want to see him stay away from that. You're watching Kenny Hustle get a wide range of forward, small forwards, guards, like, across the board. You're seeing what's happening when this team is starting to click in all the different roles these guys can have. I watched Jay Will in the G League score 23 points. Just a phenomenal job by him. Ousmane Dieng scored 22 in the same game. I think had like 12 or 15 rebounds as well. That was the other night. That was pretty spectacular to see. But I look at Jay Will and I look at JRE, and I look at these guys as being the forwards of the center, or the future, the forwards and the centers of the future of this team. Like, I get it. The goal will be is getting to the point where Chet is playing more of that center role, consistently. You know what I'm saying? But that's 2 or 3 years away. You've got to have these other big bodies in there to help Chet be able to get to that point. So you're looking at Jay Will, you're looking at Darius Baisley, and you're looking at JRE as filling that role. And yes, Baisley's the older of the three by slightly, a couple months on JRE there. But you got to look at these guys and say, if these guys can start learning how to play and mold into that bruiser mentality, each one of these guys can average 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 minutes a game, just depending on what the role is and what they're supposed to do out there, causing havoc amongst the forwards and centers, allowing Chet to get rest time, allowing, Poku to get rest time, and having this type of a bench. And yes, we want to see Jay Will morph into that NBA and Ousmane Dieng morph into that NBA role, but I don't think we're in a hurry for that to happen. Because I look at what JRE's been doing this year, man, and I'm so impressed by JRE. He's leading the team in offensive rebounds. He's leading the team in minutes because I don't think he's had any time that he's not played. There's so many things that you look at JRE and you circle and you're just like, holy shit, this guy is for real. The way he hustles, the way he does things, the way he consistently is out there and playing. And I get excited about it because, like, if he is his best version, right, he's putting up 15 points a game for us. And 8 to 10 rebounds a game. And those are big numbers for JRE. Those are big numbers for Jay Will to come into the game and average 7 and 7 and get 2 or 3 offensive charges on them. Like, these are things and roles and players that are going to come in certain positions and ideas that Baisley has that rough mentality of he's going to bruise people and hurt people if he just continues to push. I mean, how many times did you think that Luka got out of position the other day, and then all of a sudden there was a bump and Baisley was right there again? Because he's strong. He's not some little kid off the street. And you look at this and you're saying, okay, all right, I can see this, this switching and all this other stuff that's happening in the NBA, and having guys like Darius Baisley that can literally guard, 2 through 5 out there. Like, that's important to have. I mean, I get it. People will be like, well, it's more important to have a shooter out there. Well, I understand what you're saying. But the way that we play defense and what's expected out of these guys, if you're not playing defense, we're not going to have another Cantor on this team, right?
God, I don't know.
We could have had Şengün, but he can't play defense either, right? He's probably the worst defender in the league, and everybody's like, we should have got Şengün, and I'm like, why? We want defenders. We want guys that can play 1 through 5, 2 through 5, 2 through 4, whatever the case is. We want guys that can do that, rather than have somebody that's in the phenomenal scorer and can do nothing else. Because to me, team defense is so much of where this NBA is going, is because there's all these teams that are all about scoring, shooting, and all that stuff. Well, if you look at who we have out in the perimeter on defense, our Shea, right? You're going to have J-Dub out there, 7'2" wingspan. Shea has like a 7-foot wingspan, right? These guys have crazy long arms, and it makes it so that players have a hard time focusing. And we're out there, and the physical contact that Dort brings and Baisley brings, and just the know-how of Poku's way of getting there and blocking. Like, these power forwards and centers of this Thunder future is where it's at, guys. Like, yes, we have our stars. We have our, Ousmane Dieng that's going to be a guard that's going to be phenomenal to watch. We have Josh Giddey. We have Shea. But our heart and soul is this forward/center role. And it's going to be fun to watch these guys develop and turn into these roles that Mark and I see that Coach D and Sam Presti are trying to get out of them, and the coaching staff are trying to get out of them. It doesn't mean that that's going to work, because then their role could change. But right now, what we're seeing this year, it's obvious to watch roles and what the coaches are expecting to get out of these players. Because you look at the teams they're playing against. You look at where the minutes are at. You're seeing the defenses they're playing against, and you're like, oh, connect the dots. And that's why I got to say, this team, as a young team, is more exciting than any other team that's young that I've seen in a very long time, because of our defense. And when it comes down to it, when we're clicking and we're scoring 116 points a game, a lot of teams have a hard time staying with us. A lot of teams do, because we're constantly at their throat. We're constantly there. We're constantly causing issues. And basketball a lot of times comes down to 6 or 7 possessions in a game. That's it. You know, NBA guys are out there playing, and it comes down to 6 or 7 possessions. So if you're out there giving your all, and you're picking up an extra couple possessions like J. Will, when he comes to taking charge, right? You like that J. Will?
Yeah,
will come taking charge like Dort does right now, picking up all those offensive screens that are moving. Like, these are things that pick up extra possessions. And when it comes down to it, you know, we don't know what extra 7 possessions are going to mean the most, but it's giving us a better chance if we can get all these extra possessions like we are. And it's fun to watch. And then you're starting to see, and you're saying our offense can click. And then we're looking at the last 40 games of the season, and we're like, how in the world can we not just go off on these guys? And that's why Mark and I are saying, give Bazley a chance. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. We don't know how they're trying to morph his role exactly into exactly where we think he should be. Now, we think that Draymond Green role of, you know, hard nose, get knocked down, get back up, that brunt, that don't you touch my mess with my players type attitude mentality is what we think that Bazley and Kendrick Williams can bring to this squad. And that's what we need from those two guys, more than anything else.
Let me say when you watch this team play, avoid the temptation to evaluate players based on their offensive output. It's really easy to see that stat line and be like, oh, you know, that was inefficient, so he had a bad game. Like, what you need to look for is the defensive impact. And I'm going to make an argument here. First, going back to the early days of the Thunder, we had Cephalosha and then Andre Robertson. We had a singular perimeter defensive specialist, and we generally had an interior defensive specialist.
Mm-hmm.
But now the team, because of the NBA changing, and we can give the Warriors a lot of credit for this, you need to have 5 players who can defend on the perimeter. The idea of having one elite defender on the perimeter is a real misnomer that doesn't really exist on really, you know, teams of the future, teams that are being built for the future. Okay. So now, who is our best? No, I don't want to use the word best, but I'll use the most disruptive perimeter defender we have. It's Bazley. Now, it doesn't mean that everything he does is perfect, and he will give up certain things. But think about the previous version.
He does lead the league in block threes,
right?
Block 3-point shots, which is phenomenal.
So think about old days with Dirk, right? For the Mavs, you had to have a Dirk stopper. Now you got to think you have to have somebody who can defend Luka end of game situations. Now, here's the key to defending Luka. It's very simple, even though it's impossible. Okay, you got to be down low enough with your knees bent and your hands in a low position so that you can defend the drive. And then at any moment he can pull up, and he's so big that he can shoot over just about anybody. So you got to be quick to jump, but also stay down, because if you go for the fakes, he's going to get you. So, and he'll pull up from the logo. So
he'll pull up from full court.
So, and here's the thing. If you don't actually physically block his shot, it's going to go in.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So you have to have somebody that can close that space with length, and Bazley's the guy to do it. Now, does that mean you're going to send him out there to guard all game? No. But you have to be thinking that end of game situations, you need lateral quickness, and you need to be able to close the gap extremely fast, because the most dangerous end of the game situation shot in today's NBA is a superstar shooting a step back. And you got to close that gap. You got to close that gap against all types of players, and you got to do it against the best players in the world. And Bazley has that ability when he's at his best. So, we can look at him and be like, oh, he missed a couple of threes. It wasn't an effective game. But that's not fair, because what he brings to the table is much more than that. He needs to be willing to shoot the ball when he's open to not, mess up the offense. He also needs to understand his job is to move the ball from side to side, which he's improving at both of those things. But as the shot comes down, shot clock is low, shoot with confidence, and then recognize that if he can get a block, a steal, take a charge, create a deflection that turns into a turnover, any of those types of things, right? And he's really good at trapping the ball too, so that can count. And he can create 2 extra possessions. Then he's a net positive, even if he misses 2 shots, because not every shot is going to be missed by him. He's going to find ways to get to the basket and to finish, and it's going to become more and more positive. But the key with Bazley is really the key with all the guys. It's the reason, for some reason, November was all about Josh Giddey isn't that great. It's not about looking at their stat line and saying, well, they missed a lot of shots, right? It's about understanding, impacting the game of basketball. Ultimately, unless you're one of 2 players usually on each team, it comes down to a lot more than how many shots you make or miss. And even those players, the only reason we get to the point where we're we only evaluate their missed shots is because their level of other stuff gets so consistent that really that's the only way to judge it. It's yeah, they played great defense. They're an all defensive player, but really they missed most of their shots, so it was a bad game. But with other guys, especially young players like Giddey, and I want to say Trey Mann, because he's a popular guy for people to be picking on. I see this whole fake argument. Should we keep Trey Mann or Isaiah Joe? Why is that even this thing? We don't need to pit players against each other. We see each one does really special things, and just because they both share a skill set of being able to shoot threes doesn't mean it's a zero-sum game and there's only one winner and one loser. Let's look at this as fans and saying we're really lucky to have both, and that's where we are.
Yeah, and people are like, well, we have 1 draft pick for next year, so somebody's losing out, and that's again where I just take a step back and I'm like, it doesn't need to happen, because I feel like when Sam Presti traded what he did to get Ousmane Dieng, is that he was making the statement is I'm set. I've got the pieces I want for a few years. I'm good to go. And I think
my assumption is if they draft a player, he'll be at least needing as much development as Dieng.
And I think that's the thing about it, is that you use him in that G League mentality, and that's what you go with. You have another 2-way player step up in that role, and hopefully Lindy Waters figures it out or Omorari figures it out. But the reality is if they don't figure it out, that's okay. We can find another 2-way player, but using that G League for that, still getting, I think they played in 10 games or something like that, or 12 games in the NBA, still getting that NBA burn, right? But it's really focusing on that G League. And I think it's really good for these young players to come in and not having those NBA minutes. And I get it. There's going to be players that we draft and immediately they're going to earn burn time in the NBA. Just immediately. It's just going to be boom, done, But recognizing that it's not about that. It's not about getting that special out of, perfect player, It's about getting the guys and the players that we need to fill those spots. Yes, that means that we're going to be missing out on some of these players in the draft. But that's why Sam Presti went out and got what I would consider one of the better draft evaluators from 12 to 30 or 12 to 60 even in the NBA. And I look at this as being one of those situations where we're going to be in the position a lot. We're going to be in that 20-plus pick slot a lot. And we're going to be trading our pick a lot probably. In that 20 position, because we don't have many spots open. We don't have this dire need to go out and get all these other players on this team. We are not in this dire need of going and trading. We could have gotten Donovan Mitchell if we wanted to. But it wasn't about that. It wasn't.
It wasn't popular right now, bro? Everybody's talking about trading for a center. Oh, if we just go trade for a center.
But why? I don't we would go backwards, man.
I know.
If we want a center, this NBA draft, in my opinion, has one of the best centers that we would need.
But
his name is Ely. He's 7'4". He's got great feet. But he's one of those guys.
Okay, bro.
What's that?
Here's the thing. We have Chet on the bench.
We don't need guys unless we're going to draft him.
And Chet isn't necessarily going to come in and play center for us either. But my point is, why make a move based on what you need now when you know what you'll need shortly is going to be different, although you can't project what that is right now. You know what I mean? Like, what good would that do?
Man, it's you're exactly right.
It's foolishness.
You're exactly right. And I think that's the way it needs to be, is just recognizing, like I would love for this team to keep everybody on this team for as long as possible. But, we don't know how Isaiah Joe is going to fit. We don't know how Darius Baisley long-term is going to fit. We don't know how.
We know that they're checking the boxes that we need them to right now, which is.
Yeah, and that's it. That's all we need.
You have something that you can do for this team at a high level, right? Whatever that is, do that. And for Isaiah Joe and Darius Baisley, it's different things. And same with Trey Mann. And we shouldn't be comparing them to each other's skill sets because, in the end, what we see we need out there is not what coach needs from these players. And for, like this goes back to what we were saying earlier, start thinking defensively and then work to offense.
That's it. I mean, that's as simple as it can get. And that's why we're looking at guys that are 22 and 23, and we're signing Kendrick Williams at 28. And we have starting to get this mix of good veterans and young players. And to me, it's now about team chemistry. You can have the greatest team. I think about the Lakers that had Karl Malone and Gary Payton and Kobe and all these other guys on this team, right? And they're supposed to go out there and win. And they couldn't. And it's sometimes having the greatest athletes and the best athletes in one area doesn't mean it's going to all turn out to be great. And especially when you have a team that's all about chemistry, that's all about impact, that's all about as a team unit on defense. Watch how they play on defense. They're a unit on defense, guys.
Well,
on offense, they're driving, they're dishing, driving, then dishing, and then continuing that offense.
One thing that being undersized will teach them is how to be resourceful, how to overcome that disadvantage. So, yeah, just because we're being overpowered in a given moment doesn't mean that whoever's up there won't figure it out. There's a lot of ways to defend. One of the best ways is taking a charge. So you don't have to be the biggest guy to do that. So I just feel like that's what it's all about, is, to me, resourcefulness when it comes to defending. And we don't want to put a cap on these guys by putting somebody out there and oh, you're a specialist at this one thing, catching lobs and defending the paint. We'd rather see Poku or Baisley or a combination of Amarui and Kenny out there somehow playing power forward and center at super undersized positions. And as long as we do it together, right, when we can rebound together, and then we can pull it off, it's all available as long as we don't short circuit the process. And part of that now is I hear a lot of people who ironically are sitting here saying they don't want us to lose any games.
Yeah.
They want to go for the play-in. And I understand that mentality. I always want to go for the play-in. But I also think that we have to take, especially recent past, and evaluate it and say, if the season goes like the last two did, which is we get some wins, but then we get some injuries, we will find ourselves in a very similar situation to we were the last couple of years. You can call that whatever you want to. People call it all sorts of things, right? We call it leaning into player development. I understand there's this mentality we're not nearly as bad as we were last year. We have a lot more good players, but we are one player away. And if Shea stays healthy, right, and it's not him, if we lose two other guys, right, we could be in a similar situation. It could be Dort. In my opinion, also, you're talking about J-Dub and Giddey. Any two of those three guys go down, we're probably in a very similar situation where we could go 10 games and win one and find ourselves in a spot very quickly where we're leaning into getting the youngest players, the two-way players, all those players as much time as we can. So this isn't unlike previous seasons, even though it is more fun. The reason that it's similar is not necessarily because it's going to end up different, end up the same, what it is every year Sam Presti evaluates this team and where they're at and the trajectory, right? And essentially, like, this idea of going all in around the All-Star break, last 2 years, it didn't cut it. But the previous year with Chris Paul, like, it was let it ride. Yeah. We don't know where this is going to break. This next month is going to tell us a lot. But at this moment right now, of course we want to see it be successful. But we also understand there's a tremendous load, physical load being placed on these players. And we're one turned ankle from being, you know, where we were last year, where it was like we lost Shea all the way up to the All-Star break. And then as soon as the All-Star break was over, we lost Giddey. Like, these things happen. So we don't want, like, you have to stop being obsessed with the wins, like on the actual scorecard, and be like, the win is the development. And anybody who looks at it and reads to you the total points and assists and rebounds, and then they act like they watched the game, reading the stats is a way of getting around watching the game. They don't know the impact these players are making. They might look at it and be like, they scored 2 points. I have no idea why they played 25 minutes. Because coach saw them making an impact. Your goal is not to question it. Your goal is to look at it and see if you can figure out the puzzle. That's it.
It's simple, man. And I get it. We're all professionals in our own minds. And that's across the board to a lot of our, listeners out there that's saying, oh, we should do this, we should do that. And I understand, and most of the things that people have to say about this team and directions they think that this team should go in make a lot of sense. I mean, let's just put it out there. It makes a lot of sense in their mind if you look at their point of view. But that's where I keep on saying is that's why these people are not in the front office right now. It's Sam Presti. Like, he's 3 or 4 steps ahead of any of what we're thinking. Like we can sit here and you and I can say we listened to literally Sam Presti's speech from the beginning of the year. Probably, I don't know. I don't know how many times I've listened to it anymore. Like, I've stopped counting, and it's like an hour and some change. And it's just about going back and listening to it. And as the season going back and listening to it and trying to pick up the little things that he's throwing out there, because you can see him as the time goes on. And it's not obvious. I mean, he's not one of those guys that's going to go out there and say, we're not going to expect a lot from each of these guys. We just want them to play or develop, and that's it. Like, he's going out there saying, we're going to go out there and give it the best. We're going to give it the heart. We're going to see what happens. If we can stay healthy and everything looks good, then we'll go as far as we can. But if people get injured, like you said, if we look at it in Shea, there's 14 games in a month. If Shea goes out for a month and a half at any point during the season, that's 20-plus games that he's going out for. And is that enough for us to make the playoffs? Probably not. If we're going to miss having Shea for 20-plus games, that's getting him back and finally playing healthy and all that other stuff it takes getting somebody healthy like that. It's probably not worth it at that point to go and rush all in and try to get to the playoffs. Because at that moment, when we've lost Shea for a fourth of the season, if we lose Shea for the fourth of the season, hopefully we don't, knock on wood. But if we do, this is when we have to take a step back and recognize this team isn't going to get to the playoffs unless we pull some crazy miraculous deal where Jalen Williams starts averaging 20 points a game, Dort starts averaging 20, Josh Giddey starts averaging 20, and it makes up for Shea. And who knows, that could happen.
But I mean, here's the thing. While it could happen, right, and while it'd be really fun if it did, the only way anything like that happens is if we do find ourselves in a spot where we start leaning in toward player development. And I would argue that that's been one of the really effective things that we've been able to do. And now you look at it and we're like, okay, we're doing less leaning in on player development at the beginning of this year, although we are doing that a lot. The offensive load is running through Shea. Like, it's like, hey, go out there and do what you do. And it's a less, even though I'd say we try to keep the ball moving side to side, it's a little less equal opportunity, right? Which is good. I mean, it shouldn't necessarily be equal opportunity when you have a superstar on your team. But we've progressed. And I think that's why you see a player like Jang really focus on the G League, because that gives him a much more balanced opportunity. But if you get to that later point in that stage, the season, and we aren't at full strength, and we see J-Dub out there leading the team, being the best player, knowing that he's required to go out there, we could see him go out there and put up 40. because he's capable of that. Now, if he's out there with Shea and Giddey and Dort, like, I just don't think he's going to go out there and be like, I'm going to throw this team on my back and do that. Like, that's just, he's about making the right play more than anything. And sometimes the best thing for players' development is to be like, now the right play is to go out there and score. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's why we look at it, we say, whether it's what we want or whether it's something that's outside of our control or whatever it is, there's a growth opportunity at every single intersection, and we're looking for whatever that is.
Yeah, and I think that's just where we're at as a whole, as a team, as a group of people that are fans of this Oklahoma City Thunder, is that supportive of this team regardless, supportive of these players regardless. And people can call it homering, people can call it, they're just fans of everything and everything the Thunder do, and whatever. I get it. But I'd rather be a fan of Sam Presti and Coach D and each one of these players than be somebody that everybody else is like, hey, at least he's real in the aspect of telling people all the negative things that happen. Like, we all have people that like that in our lives. We all have grandfathers that are the biggest fucking assholes in the entire world, right? Because they tell everybody their fucking opinions. And guess what? Most of these people that we know that tell everybody their opinions, whether they're wanted or not, they end up being alone. And I look at this and I say, I want the way that I talk about these players is a positivity. And I wrote my daughter a text message this morning. She's going through a hard day at school, and she's going through a hard day or hard time with crew, which she's in rowing. She's 14 years old. And I was like, listen, life isn't all about being 100% perfect. You can't always expect yourself to be there and be perfect at all times. But you can expect yourself to give 110%. And when you see people giving 110%, those kids are going to be special. And that's why I told her, I was like, when you're giving 110% in your classrooms, and you're giving 110% at your crew in that erg, like, your coaches and your teachers, they recognize it. If you're off in La La Land and you're not paying attention and you're not rowing hard and you're not giving 110%, your coaches and your teachers, they notice that. But if you're willing to do whatever it takes to put the effort in, everybody recognizes it, and teachers will help you. They'll give you a redo on a test. Coaches will help you if they recognize that you're about to pass out. They'll step up because you're giving your all. And I look at this team, and every single one of these players, every second they give it their all. And that's what we want. That's what we want in a team. We don't want to be the coolest guys out there. We don't want to have all the coolest stuff and all the biggest cars and all the best girlfriends and all this other stuff, the flashy shit, right? These guys are just out there balling, balls to the wall, giving their all. And we, as fans and as super fans, we're never going to sit there and trash them. Never going to sit there and be like, what the fuck is your issue? Because this is our team. They deserve our support. And that's from the top all the way down. And I just appreciate each one of them for all the efforts that they give out there. And I want to say this to everybody that's listening to. I appreciate you guys. Like I said, we're ranked in all these countries, France and I don't even know where all the countries are, but it doesn't matter. 2 of our podcasts, our video podcast and our other podcast, are ranked, and we're getting hundreds of views a day on our other podcasts on YouTube. We have one about Josh Giddey and don't treat Josh like Russ, and that just keeps going up and up and up. And it's fun to watch because, to me, like, it's about understanding where these players are, protecting these players, and loving these guys as they're going. And I'm all for any of you guys that reach out on YouTube, and you guys can see any of the comment sections. We love to talk to people. Jump on there, comment, right? And the other thing is that if you want to say something about us in a negative way, that's cool. Give us a 1 star, but please fucking stay away from the 2 stars. It's always confusing if you give somebody a 2 or 3 star and you're giving them a shit review. So I don't want you guys to go give us reviews necessarily, but please, if you're going to give us a negative review, keep to that 1 star, and we will definitely make sure that we read any reviews that we get online, especially if it's coming from a father to parents, or a father to children, whatever it said. Yeah, whatever that bad review was. It was classic. It was amazing. And
it really underscores to me, like, the whole riddle of this thing. Like if you've been conditioned to listen to people trash the team and be nice to other media members, right? Then you're going to really not like us, right? But if they trash the players, we trash them. That's it. I mean, it's that fucking simple. It's really never been more complicated than that. We started off 2 years ago, almost to the day now, like about a week and a half now. We had our 2-year full anniversary, and we just had one fucking thing. And that whole podcast that you mentioned, that's, you know, people keep watching on YouTube, bro, like it says, don't treat Josh Giddey like Russ. That's the exact mentality. We're saying we've seen this pattern play out. A lot of you probably didn't even realize it was a problem. Some of you have reached out and said, yeah.
Thank you for calling it out.
Right. Like I was thinking the same thing. I couldn't believe that nobody was calling it out.
There has been a ton of those people, by the way.
A lot more of those people than the people who say, oh, no, don't hurt my friend's feelings. But whenever those happen, I just want them to know, like, it's really not hard to figure out. Like, if these people were better to the team and then they called out the media for being inappropriate, that's fine. That happens in other media markets.
Yeah, man.
But it doesn't, for some reason, this mentality around the Thunder is that the media is untouchable. And anybody who says anything bad about the media is automatically bad in themselves. And it creates this amnesty for everybody in the media to just go around and be dicks to the players if the players don't, like, treat them the way they want to be treated. And we're just saying enough. That's it.
And last year at the end of the season, one of the media people asked Sam Presti if we've been fair. And that's where I got to say is that if you're asking Sam Presti if you've been fair to the team and to the organization, that's where you're all wrong. Because you're either fair or you're not fair. There's not a medium line. There's not a, you know what? Like, Sam Presti was saying, fair enough. Like, fair. Yeah, sure. You guys have been fair. Like, but guess what? Supportive. If he had asked, have we been supportive of this team? It would have been a whole new answer, because fair and supportive are two different things. And that's where we choose to be. We choose to be the fucking bra of the Oklahoma City Thunder rather than having saggy tits walking around. And I'm not going to compare micro penises today. I'm going to compare tits, baby.
I hope that your kids aren't listening to our podcast. If they are, you probably need to put some restrictions on what they can consume. But I'm glad you're thinking of your kids when you listen to us. And we just want you guys to know, if you made it this far, you are the clit. We love you so much. Christmas is almost here. We hope that you're enjoying the holidays. Take a shot. Pour one out. Blunt. Enjoy your love. Blunt. Blunts! All right, bro. We're out of here.
All right, guys. Take it easy.
Woo!